All right, boys, let's get into the main topic for this episode, and that is the playoff race in the Eastern Conference. And first of all, it's nice that we actually have a race in the East this season. I mean, going back to last year, there was next to no race at all. I mean, we knew which teams were going to be in December. There was just no race at all, and now we've got one. Really. There's three teams that are kind of in and around it, and then others that, have slipped. And unfortunately, my Sabres are included in that now, 7 points out, and, a team like the Ottawa Senators as well, and the list goes on. But as of right now, the New York Islanders hold that first wildcard spot, 80 points, 11 games to go. Florida, they've won 3 in a row. They've been on a nice little run. They've gotten things together. 79 points, 12 games to go. And then the Pittsburgh Penguins, who, it's been kind of a free fall for them. They've lost 4 straight, 78 points with 12 games remaining. So, Case, we'll go to you first, man. How do you see this playing out in the East, and who ends up getting those 2 wildcard spots?
Yeah, I kind of broke it down to 4 teams, actually. I still include the Sens in this race, in my opinion. But I have come to the conclusion that they will fall short. I broke them down at looking at the last 10 games for all 4 of those teams, and then looking at kind of some key matchups coming up for each of them and injuries as well. So the Panthers in their last 10 were 7-1-3. Sens were 4-5-1. Islanders 6-3-1, and the Pens 4-5-1. You got to think it's going to be the Panthers, and I actually am just going to quite simply say that the Panthers will overtake the Islanders for the first wildcard spot. They do have a tough lineup coming up of a 4-game road trip for one. They've got Toronto twice, they've got the Rangers, Ottawa twice, and Carolina. And actually, the last 3 games of this season are Washington, Toronto, and Carolina. And that's going to be so exciting because that's going to be a real race, and those games are all going to matter. So I'm actually going to take the Panthers in the first wildcard spot. And I started looking at injuries, and the Islanders are beat up. So I started to think, you never know what's going to happen there. They might be able to slip. But man, the Pens are beat up. Kulikov, Bonino, Petrie, Ruda, Pettersson, all with lingering injuries at the moment. The Islanders have Wallstrom, Barzal, Koivula, Bailey, and Aho. It's remarkable how tough that's been. But the Pens have had some struggling goaltending lately. They've got injuries and a tough lineup as well coming up down the stretch. So I'm going to take the Islanders in the second wildcard spot, and the Penguins will be falling short in the Sens as well.
Okay, so you've got Florida, then the Islanders, right, as your 1-2?
Yeah.
Listen, like when I looked at these... Oh,
sorry,
ahead.
just quickly about the Islanders, like the reason that I think that they can pull it out despite those injuries is Sorokin.
Yep.
Yeah. Fair enough. Listen, when I looked at these 3 teams, because that's what I boiled it down to as well. I don't think Ottawa, Washington, or Buffalo are there. They're all under a 2% chance on Money Puck to make the playoffs, despite having some decent seasons, particularly from Buffalo and Ottawa. They just weren't hot at the right times or for long enough or consistently enough. So next year I think there'll be teams to reckon with in the Atlantic Division. But when I looked at those top 3 teams, like we mentioned, the New York Islanders, the Florida Panthers, and the Pittsburgh Penguins, I thought, first thing I should do is go to Money Puck and see what they say, because depending on where they are in the standings, including points percentage and including strength of schedule going forward, like it just made sense for me to go to Money Puck. They have Florida with an 80% chance to make the playoffs, the New York Islanders with a 69% chance to make the playoffs, and the Penguins with a 47% chance to make the playoffs. But despite that, I think I'm going to take Florida in that number 1 spot, similar to you, Case, and Pittsburgh in the number 2 spot, and that would leave the New York Islanders falling short, despite currently holding that first spot in the wild card race. And the reason I think this is because I'm more willing to bet on Pittsburgh and Florida overcoming some of their slumps, I would say. Florida had a slump at the start of the season. Obviously, they had to work through some growing pains and figure out, who was going to play goalie and play it well for them, and figure out chemistry after losing Uyghur and Huberdeau. But, I think for the most part, they figured it out. I mean, you mentioned how hot they are in their last 10 games, and Matthew Tkachuk is having like almost a Hart caliber season this year. He's been incredible. So I'm willing to bet on Florida. I feel like they've figured it out despite a really tough start, which I'm considering just a prolonged slump to start the season. And then Pittsburgh, same thing. I feel like all season long they've been pretty up and down and streaky, whether they've been good or bad in that regard. So, they're in a slump right now, but they've got 12 games left, and I feel like if any team is going to be able to break out of that slump, get in, and not only get in, but actually be competitive in the playoffs between these two teams, Pittsburgh and the Islanders, I think Pittsburgh really is the better team. And if they get some good goaltending from one of their guys, I think they'll be okay. So, and just when looking at the numbers for those two teams, when comparing them, Florida and Pittsburgh, they're both towards the bottom, both in the bottom 5 actually, and goals below expected. So that tells me for two teams loaded with weapons, they've just been getting unlucky, and neither of those teams have been getting good goaltending either. So I'm most confident in Florida, I think. Maybe that's a recency bias because they won the President's Trophy last year, and I thought they were going to be worse, but not as bad as they were, say, a month ago. And then Pittsburgh, like you guys know that I've liked this team for the last few years, and as long as Tristan Jarry figures it out, or DeSmith is able to come in and give them something between the pipes, like I wouldn't mind that either. And I think I have more confidence in them than the Islanders, who are still banged up. But yeah,
I just see Jarry losing 4 of his last 5 starts. It looks really tough, and then like they're playing some good competition in Colorado, Dallas, Boston, New Jersey in the next few games. It's like those are not easy teams to turn around a slump against. Something to think about when it comes to Florida and goaltending is that Bobrovsky has played the last 13 games in a row. And they're really taxing him at the moment, and they're going to be going into the playoffs. We'll see how that turns out.
Alex Lyon, I think, is starting tonight for them. So
we'll see how that goes. Been good for them as well when he's played, and because obviously Spencer Knight is in the player assistance program, and certainly wish him well. But Bobrovsky's not a young guy, and they're really wearing him out. That's for sure. Just quickly on my end with this, I think it stays the same. I think the two wildcard teams, as it's currently constructed right now, with the Islanders ahead of the Panthers, I think that's exactly what we're going to finish with. The Islanders have the goaltending, man. Sorokin may win. It probably will be Linus Ullmark that will win the Vezina this year, but Sorokin is going to get a lot of votes, and it's perfect for the Islanders because, regardless of how banged up they are, no Barzal in the lineup, this and that, it's perfect for them. They've got the goaltender that can give them the saves in a 2-1, 3-2, 1-0 kind of game that, we see the Islanders always play, and play that trap style kind of defensive game, and the type of hockey that they play under Lane Lambert, and going back to when Barry Trotz was behind the bench, it's perfect for this time of year. So I can't see the Islanders not getting in. And then in that number 2 spot with Florida, Chad, you mentioned Matthew Tkachuk, and I absolutely agree that I think he will get some Hart Trophy consideration. We obviously know the guy in Edmonton who's going to win it this year, but when you're thinking of other guys who could be very deserving, Matthew Tkachuk in Florida, Barkov is the captain there. He just became the leader in points in franchise history, passing Jonathan Huberdeau, funny enough, but Kachuk has been such a driver for them this year and really has been the heartbeat of the Panthers, I think. And I cannot see that guy not in the postseason. He's just perfect for that type of hockey in this kind of year. And I think we're looking at a scenario where the other end of that big trade in the offseason, Weegar and Huberdeau and the Flames, they miss out. And at one point we were in danger of it just being a complete wash, and Kachuk and the Panthers not getting in either. But I think they will, just because of how he's played and the sheer will that he has, and they're rolling right now at the right time. So I think it stays the exact same.
Case, let me ask you this as we wrap up on who we think is going to take the last 2 wildcard spots in the East. If you had to rank them in terms of who you would least like your Devils to face in the first round, if the Devils finish first in the Metro and overtake Carolina, who would you be least willing for the Devils to play? Who would you hate to play the most?
The Penguins. It's quite simple. Crosby scores almost every time they play each other for some reason. Well, not for some reason. He's one of the best players in the world. And then the track history, we just lose against that team. So I'm going to go, I'd rather not play the Penguins, because they're also the team that I think is most likely to upset Carolina just out of the blue because of the playoff history on this team, the way they play hockey. And it's going to take Carolina, or it's going to take Jari figuring it out by the end of the year, but I think that they can upset whoever they play, and that scares me a lot. The Devils just played Florida and lost, so that doesn't make me feel great either.
I feel like their styles match a lot more, though, a lot more closely. They're both teams that can score off the rush. They're both fast. Yeah,
exactly. I think they might have split the season series this year, so I don't know. I think all of them will be interesting. I really am not scared of the Islanders at all.
What about Sorokin?
With the way the Devils play hockey, they're going to get 50 shots on Sorokin because the Islanders collapse and the Devils are fast and creative. So they're bound to score a couple on those 50 shots. Not that worried about the Islanders. Clip this for when they beat them in the first round. But yeah, I'm going to say the Penguins. I'd rather not see them in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I just thought it was interesting to ask because this could be a first round matchup, the Devils versus any 3 of these teams, depending on how it shakes out in the next, 10 to 12 games.
Minnesota and New Jersey play tonight, and they can both take first place.
Wow. And you would like that more so than playing the Rangers in the first round, probably, right?
Yeah, because I'll be an absolute stress bucket if they play the Rangers in the first round, because I'd rather die than watch them lose those pieces of shit.
That would be something else for sure.